All right. Welcome. It is 11 a.m. Eastern Thursday morning, time for the Real Dope podcast, the show that focuses on you, the person who loves, supports, and quite frankly, just has to deal with addicts. We're recording this podcast today right after the Thanksgiving Day holiday.
Yeah.
And for some of you, that may have been a really, really challenging holiday. It leads into, now we head into Christmas and to New Year's. But today we're going to talk about something really interesting. We're going to talk about rehab. And Beth, I was thinking about the very first time I thought rehab was my savior. I thought, gosh, my husband will go to rehab and everything will be okay. We did that intervention with Daddy and I thought this will be it. He'll go to rehab and everything will be okay. But a lot of times rehab is nothing more than the first step in the journey. Boy, has rehab come a long way.
Yeah.
Which is the focus of today's show. We're going to talk about how rehab has changed, what you can expect from rehab, and maybe even uncover some hidden things that you need to think about when somebody goes to rehab. So before we dive in, I want to remind you, we are not therapists, we are not doctors. We're just two people like you who have suffered through loving, supporting, and quite frankly, having to deal with addicts. So let's go ahead and start the show.
Welcome to The Real Dope, a podcast for anyone walking alongside someone battling addiction, based on the powerful book, The Real Dope on Dealing with an Addict, by sisters Elizabeth Brand and Meridith Elliott Powell. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share authentic stories, and provide the honest guidance. Let's begin today's journey and turn survival into strength.
Let's turn survival into strength. So Beth, why don't you kick us off today?
Well, I thought we'd just start and go through our three time periods that we have been with somebody in rehab. Our father in the mid 80s, our husbands somewhere in the late 90s, kind of. And then our brother in the 2000s, and also when we started speaking in them,
yes,
in 2012 and through 15 or so, like that. And what has changed, and why it's important to note those changes, where they've come along, how they're going to help you, how they're not really quite there with enablers yet, with family stuff. And yeah, I think setting expectations is the really, really important part. And I'm not sure these facilities set those expectations all that well yet. Maybe some do, some don't. Also know that they're all different.
Yeah.
And at least in North Carolina, and from our research of the book, of course, that was 2012, there was very little regulation over them. So, you have to really do your homework with them and make sure you talk to people who have been there and been in them to know which ones are good or bad. Because I think that's super scary that there's not a lot of regulation.
Yeah, I think when I think about the biggest thing that has changed in rehab from the time, I don't even know if it was when Teddy was in rehab, but it certainly was when we spoke in them. When my husband first went to rehab, it was all or nothing. They wouldn't deal with him unless he was sick.
Yes.
And that was probably the biggest challenge, because it'd be like taking somebody who had, workaholism or a weight issue or something and saying, until you fix your problem, we won't talk.
Yeah, it was crazy. But that goes back to the medical piece. And it really speaks to the fact that addiction is so messy that doctors do not like, the medical community likes to have an answer. They like to do a scientific thing. And it's different for everyone. Like some people, there's underlying depression. Some people have societal anxiety. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why a person turns to a substance to numb themselves or make themselves feel alive. But it'd be like taking someone with depression and say, well, we're really not going to treat your depression until you're happy again.
Yeah, until you're willing to get out of the room and
exactly
and go to work. And I didn't understand at the time that he didn't stand a chance if you were going to take the alcohol away from him. The one rehab he went to here in Asheville, they just took the alcohol away and they put him on pills.
And, that was an experience of mine too that we can get into.
Yeah.
Let's start with Daddy.
Yeah.
In the so this is the mid 1980s in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember where it was. Was in Connellsville, or
it was somewhere like that. It was not in Uniontown.
It was not in Uniontown, but it was close by.
Yeah.
And it was an actual facility. It wasn't hospital run.
Yeah, and I don't remember, did he go into it?
For 3 days.
He did go into it for 3 days. I was so young. I don't remember.
So basically, we did the typical intervention at the facility that you would. I came home from DC because I was like 24, 25. I came home from DC, and then we did a big intervention, which is humiliating for him.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think that was probably the worst mistake with it, is not understanding who my father was.
Yeah.
And there was so much pride in who he was, and to sit there and have his children say that they're disappointed in him.
And he had done so much for us, and he tried his best.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the thing at the time, to make them. I think he already felt bad enough about himself.
Yeah, exactly.
That was not. If I were his psychologist today, which I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a person. I would. That is like the last thing I would have done.
Yeah, I think I still, I don't even know if they do interventions today, but one thing that we did not understand at the time is, and quite frankly, I learned from Eric Clapton, is that reading his book, was that addicts hate themselves so much. I mean, there's so much self-loathing that doing the intervention, in my opinion, wasn't helpful.
It makes it worse.
It was far worse.
And I can also remember from my point of view, and probably from your point of view too, and probably from our mother's point of view, we didn't understand. We kept thinking, if he loved us enough, he wouldn't do this.
Right.
And that is just so wrong. And nobody told us that was wrong. I mean, they're not doing it to you. They're not doing it because of you. They're just, somebody told me years and years and years later that it's like you're telling them not to breathe, and they can't understand. Yeah. Not like, how do I live if I'm not breathing? It's so not about us at this point. But of course we thought that, and nobody made, and basically that's what the intervention was, right? We're sitting there going, you embarrassed me at this thing, and if you loved me, you wouldn't do this. And it's really bad. So
and well, I was just going to say, we did the intervention, but I don't recall any discussion of us and how we needed to support him or do anything like that.
No, there was no aftercare. There was no family program whatsoever. Nobody said that maybe, you have a problem, which we did, a problem that had been passed down.
Right.
We had all just married what we lived through as children, including our father.
Right.
Bless
Excuse
you.
me.
Including our father, who took care of an alcoholic like his whole life, and an enabler, his mother, So, but there was no intervention there because nobody knew, because the medical community and the mental health community, this was just a problem they had ignored forever and ever.
Yeah.
So he went in he stayed like 3 days, and then he came out, and I mean, he was like dead like a few months later.
Yeah, he was dead. In fact, he, I don't know if you remember this, but he flew out to Oklahoma to see his brother. His brother was a doctor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, his brother put him in testing out there. Mm-hmm. And
his brother was a doctor.
Yeah, his brother was a doctor, and his brother had connections at the hospital out there, and put him through pretty significant testing. And they set him down, and they said, if you don't quit drinking, you'll be dead, within a few months. And when they got back to the motel room, mother found alcohol underneath his chair.
Yeah. And he probably really didn't care if he'd be dead. He was ready for that by that.
He was ready for that by then.
Yeah. He had put all his money in order. He even put money for us to come home to the funeral. I mean, like, he'd put it away so we didn't have to pay our way back to his funeral. Yeah. To make sure that we were taken care of. And I just think about, he was ready to die, and he was ready to go, and there was, the intervention didn't help. But even if he had been mentally healthier and gone into rehab, I don't think it would have done much at that point. I don't think they knew what they were doing.
No, and there was no support for us, so he would have just come right back home. I mean, mother was so angry at that point, know where to process her anger.
And do you remember too, she didn't even call us when he was in the hospital for the last time until the last minute. I didn't even get to see him again. The last time I saw him was at that intervention, which makes me really, really sad.
Wow.
But but she didn't call us because, she doesn't like to bother us. Doesn't want us to know. Another thing of the enabler, trying to control the situation, of all that. So
Yeah.
So luckily, rehab evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And by the late 1990s, I don't know, for Edward, we were in a hospital setting. How about you with Doug?
No, the very first one he went into was used to be a mental health facility, and it was private. It was charter. Do you remember charter?
Oh yeah, I do.
Big. They ended up declaring bankruptcy, but they were really big. And I remember going in there, and his mother went with us. And we went in, and they admitted him for 3 days. And I had really good insurance. And we asked if he could stay 30, and they said no.
And that's the other Arbor thing. The insurance companies had decided on 27 days. And see, this is the medicine likes people to be the same.
Right.
And so that they can have a way to treat you. And a lot of times that works great and is wonderful, but not in addiction because everyone is so different. But 27 days in rehab, and then they were supposed to be fine. Right. That was the thing then. You'd have some outpatient stuff going on. We had while our loved one was in rehab, which I have to say the rehab was good. It was run by former addicts, even though it was in a hospital setting. There were doctors and nurses, but it was run by former addicts, which I think really pushed Edward in a very, very good way. They didn't put up with his crap. They knew they understood what he was going through. They knew when he was lying, and they were good. But while he was in rehab, I had to go to a family thing, which is good that they had some.
Oh, that's great. I didn't have anything like that. But
it was a group thing, so everybody's stunned because their loved one's in the hospital. So everyone's just stunned, and it was led by this little girl. She wasn't a girl; she was a woman, but she was really a little girl who had just gotten out of school and had no experience whatsoever with addiction other than what she'd learned in school and where she'd done her residency or whatever. She was a psychologist, so I don't know if she had residency, but she didn't understand. I mean, she was so out of her depth. And I'd been through it enough at this point. For most of the people in the group, it was new. But, considering my family situation, I'd been through it enough at this point that I was looking at her going, this is just the dumbest thing I've ever gone to. But good that they had it, because they didn't have it before.
I didn't have family support for one single piece of rehab that Doug ever went through.
What about when Doug got out of that rehab? Then what was the support system?
He was supposed to they let him out in 3 days. His mother and I begged for him to stay for 30. They let him out in 3, and it was clear. Oh yeah, they let him out in 3. And they said there was no need. He could do outpatient.
Yeah.
And he never went back. But what became clear to me within a week was that they had just replaced the alcohol for pills.
So that's what happened to us too.
Yeah, and so it was and Doug was not a big pill popper. I mean, he would smoke dope and he would pop pills if alcohol was not available, but he was completely the opposite of Edward. Alcohol was always his drug of choice. So it was they never, I think the biggest difference, they never dealt with whatever it was that put him in that situation, the trauma, and never ever focused on that.
Yeah, and so when Edward got out of the hospital, and I have to say the rehab was good. I did like the people, but again, 27 days, that's all insurance would pay for. So what are you going to do? And so the aftercare for him, he went to a psychiatrist, and then we went together to a psychologist that was part of the system, and the hospital system, and the psychiatrist gave him Xanax.
Oh,
they gave
him,
and Edward was a drug addict, so he loved it. Not only did he give him Xanax, but he gave them to me to give to him. I was supposed to monitor the Xanax.
Wow.
I mean, talk about putting an enabler in a bad situation for me mentally, but also a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Edward was not a dangerous person, but you do not want to get in between an addict and their pills. And that wasn't
No,
my
you do not.
responsibility. And we had a little baby at the time. It was terrible. It was terrible. What a thing for a doctor to do. And then his psychologist that worked with in his group, I can remember him like laughing at me because he just couldn't believe how naive I was, kind of. But he didn't help guide me. He was just this jerky guy. I mean, at the time I was devastated. But I look back on him now and I'm thinking, what were the two of you doing? And they were supposed to be the experts in the state in the 1990s. Yeah. They were horrible. And I mean, what a way to treat a drug addict and an enabler. Like, what a way. Like, we're there for help and you're laughing at me. Really, really bad. So that was our aftercare after the circle of, it was just poor. And again, I do not believe they understood enabling in any way. And maybe they sort of understood addiction, but I'm just thinking if you're a psychiatrist and your specialty is addiction, giving him Xanax, and it's kind of funny because I look at like those weight loss drugs now. Yeah. And they're like, oh, they cure this and they cure that and they cure this and that's the way they talked about Xanax in the 90s.
Well, do you know when my husband's a dentist, and when he started in practice, he said they used to come around and they told you if you did not give your patients Oxy, it was malpractice. Yeah, and they would come up, they would come by, and then before they left, they'd ask you if you need a few for yourself.
Well, I would if I'm just a person in the world, but I would really be careful with drugs. But Xanax was supposed to replace Valium and be like, it's not addictive. It's not this, it's not that. And as we all know, it's extremely addictive. And it's, yeah. But yeah, so he got like 90 purple, and I think purple were the highest drug content. He got 90 purple Xanax a month. That's 3 a day of very hard Xanax. Like most people I know that take it now, they get like white Xanax, and they're supposed to be, obviously people, I do not know what I'm talking about, but they're supposed to be less. So he got the highest quantity, 90 a month, and I was supposed to dole them out. So this is what I'm saying, people, be careful. And where we were was this was supposed to be the biggest. He's a doctor, MD, licensed, and he's supposed to be the best in the state. So yeah.
The best therapy we ever got, it wasn't rehab, but I had Doug wanted to go to, he honestly wanted to get better, and he just couldn't cross that bridge. And we went to a therapist, and the therapist asked to see me. And when I went in there, she said, he is the most broken human being I've ever met. She said, there's a level of sadness in there. And she said, the challenge is he has to want to get past it. And I'm not sure he can do it. Yeah. And it was the hardest dose of reality I'd ever gotten. But don't
you think that talks about our father too?
Yes. Yeah.
Same thing, that brokenness. Yeah. I don't believe Edward, my husband, was ever broken like that.
Yeah. Yeah. She said that she just said he's broken, and I'm not sure he can come back.
Yeah. I believe that Edward just had so much trauma that he didn't know where to begin to unpack it.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing with rehab today, right? I mean, which we were talking a little bit about those weight loss drugs. It's not dealing with, if you're doing everything right under the sun and you still can't lose any weight, that's a different thing. But, if you feel a need to sit down and eat 4 pieces of pie at Thanksgiving dinner, something else is going on there, right?
Yeah.
The trauma, it's the same thing as like have 2 glasses of wine, fine, but you're pumping the 3rd and the 4th, something is going on there, right? So so it's like the difference I think today is that they do deal with the trauma. I think today too they deal with the addict while the addict is still using.
Yes, and they do dual diagnosis. Yeah, they recognize the addiction, but they also recognize there's things underneath it that are going on. And if we go up to 2007, between 2015 maybe, when we were actively working with facilities, and also they became more beautiful for sure. They became, the ones we were dealing with here were more resort-like. The ones we looked at for Ted, which he never entered, that was, I was just going, why don't they have this for enablers?
I know, really.
Because we function, we don't get anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and then I remember the lady at the facility that we looked at for Ted, was like, and of course, Mother and I looked at it. Ted wasn't there. He wasn't interested in his own recovery, which is my mother enabling and me enabling her. They did, like, they had yoga in the morning and a beautiful gym, and it's outdoors and just lovely. But they had to monitor their exercise, because a lot of people replace exercise for the addiction, for whatever their other addiction was. But and then all the food was organic, cooked there. It was beautiful. And they did have a family program, but I never made it to that, so I never experienced that.
Yeah, I also think you mentioned something really good about food too, is I think that they're noticing, they're saying that there's a lot, that food does make a difference, that eating healthy, having the right things, I mean, how you feel it makes it easier to move through the through the addiction. So I think they're paying a lot more attention to the bigger picture, like the importance of silence, the importance of, getting a form of exercise, the importance of being outside versus the rehab centers that we took them to, that you were just basically shut in for 3 to 4 days. And now they want them to get outside in nature, and focus more on healthy, holistic life than just, I felt like rehab before it was just focused so much on not doing the bad habit.
Yeah, instead of developing a life.
Right.
And so that's where I think at the one that we spoke to on a regular basis, where we were speaking to the families. But these were families of young people who have addiction issues. So, I mean, to me, that's like the hardest people to speak to, because they definitely want an answer. They want everything to be okay, and it's just not going to be. But they were actually an outdoor program, which I just think for young people is just, it just intellectually makes sense to me, that having them outside, challenging themselves, seeing that they can do, building up confidence is good for somebody who's suffering with addiction issues.
Yeah, I also think they focus more now on the brain's ability to adapt and change. I mean, you've done the grooves there that say you have to do this, but casting a vision for yourself and really thinking about what you want and who you want to be and how you want to go out into the world, and really working on changing that brain chemistry, away from whatever substance it is.
And like you said, the grooves in your head, your automatic behaviors, changing those. And that's where it's good that today, so often they have, they're not called halfway houses, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
They get out of rehab and then they don't just go back in the world, especially for young adults, I think, or even teenagers. They go into places where they're still on their own. Mommy and daddy are no longer there to blame, or wife and children no longer there to blame. You're in another place where you go to work every day and you're part of the community, but you're still in a sober community where you're still coming back until those pathways in your head, those automatic grooves for automatic thinking, are more established before you go back into your other life and your home life.
Yeah, I've got a friend whose son's now, gosh, he's 32, but he was in rehab when he was in his 20s. And when he got out, he lived like 3 years in a sober community.
Yeah,
just to build up that muscle to stay sober while living in the real world. So I think they focused more on transition, because that was the other thing too, is pretty much you got out and then you would, go to AA, or you would do, whatever. But if you didn't have the self-discipline to do that, it wasn't going to happen.
I mean, Edward came back to me. I can remember it was like Valentine's Day, and we had like a big dinner. I was really excited. Cabell was like 2, and I was really excited to have him. And of course, then you see your loved one. They're sober, so you have this glimpse of what you had and where you were, and you're like so excited for the future. And then both of you I had no programming then. Both of us just fell back into the same patterns.
Right.
Right. And of course he reached for the drugs and stuff. He had no training out of that. And that's another thing. I think you should talk about, as we wrap up, like how that's the first, like rehab is just the first step.
Yeah. I mentioned it. I mentioned it before that I thought the very first time that Doug went to rehab, he was going to be okay and he was going to be fine. I thought, this is over. I can check the box. We are finished. We are going on with our lives. And I think there's two fallacies there. Number one is, back when I used to go to AA open mic night, is that it takes a lot of addicts up to 12 to 13 times if they ever make it to sobriety. They have to go in and out a lot. And think about any addiction you've ever struggled with, right? Like,
weight.
Yeah, like weight. You do your best and then you just can't take it anymore and you eat.
Life becomes stressful and you forget all your good habits.
Exactly. And so, going on that, the other is that you have to realize the moment that they go into rehab, you need to go in.
Absolutely. Or before.
Yeah, or before. But I think one of the biggest nails in the coffin, so to speak, on my husband's rehab was the fact that I had completely lost trust and faith in him. Fairly lost trust.
You're allowed to do that.
Yeah, I was allowed to do that. But people can't get better in a world with somebody that just is expecting them to fail, right? And not trusting them and questioning them all the time. They get exhausted by it. So I needed to make a decision as to whether I wanted to support that rehab or whether I didn't want to support that rehab. But it wasn't fair for for me to stay in that and still have that lack of trust and faith in him. I think that's really, really important. I think that the moment you need to understand they're on a journey, and that journey may take a lot of steps.
And you're on a journey too. You're going to fail back again too. You are going to go into back into your spiral as well. Even if the person came home and was completely sober and never touched another, you will go back into your behavior patterns. There are things known as a dry drunk. Well, there's dry enabling too. You don't have to have an addict present to go back into your behaviors.
No,
for sure.
And you have to come to terms with the fact that the addict is changing, and what worked for you being married or loving or supporting an addict no longer works for you anymore. Like there's always benefit that you're getting from it.
We could do what we wanted, right? Like we were in control in a way because they're not paying attention.
Yeah, they're not paying attention. Oh my God, the number of times I gaslit Doug.
Me too. Easily manipulated.
Easily manipulated. But I think,
well, you're not in a partnership, right?
Yeah.
It's not a partnership, and the other person isn't a responsible person, so you can just take over.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. So what's your biggest takeaway from this show?
Okay, my biggest takeaway, what I want people to know is that what you just said, that you have to, no matter where they are in rehab, we just wanted to tell you what rehab was like from our perspective. No matter where they are in rehab, you need to take care of yourself. Even if they never go to rehab, you have to take care of yourself. If they go to rehab, you have to take care of yourself. And also know that their journey is a journey. They're not going to come back from 27 days in rehab and be perfect. That's ridiculous. And if there were enabler rehab, which there should be, maybe that's our next thing there. Just give yoga retreats for enablers. You're never going to be perfect either. This is a journey for both of you.
Yeah, I think my biggest is that is letting go of expectation.
Yeah.
Is that the one of the biggest highs you'll ever have is when they're in rehab or they're in jail. It's the most freedom you ever have because they're safe, they're taken care of, and no phone call is coming to you. But
they let Edward call me in rehab. I thought, I was like, damn it.
No, that didn't happen to me. But my biggest thing was, but you have this expectation that when they come home, everything's going to be normal. And there is no such thing. You made up a life that with this person, and you need to decide whether you want to be in it or not in it. And either way is okay. But you have to understand they're going to step forward, go 7 steps back. And this is a process, as you will.
And so are you.
Right. Yeah.
So are you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's okay to make it different. It's okay to stay. It's okay to leave. It's your life too.
Yeah. I think that's I think those things are really, really important. So next time, I want to talk about trust, because I think living with an addict, loving an addict, supporting an addict really erodes trust. And trust is a fundamental part of any relationship. In fact, it's really hard to be in a relationship with a lack of trust and a lack of respect. And I think we need to explore both of those subjects as they relate to addiction, not only as they relate to the addict, but respect for yourself and trust for yourself. So that's what I want to focus on.
I think that's good. Yeah. I even wrote it down so we'd remember.
Okay, good, because I won't. All right.
Okay.
Again, I just want to remind you that this show is just for you. It's not for the addict. It's for the enabler. It's for people who love, support, and quite frankly, have to live and deal with addiction. This show is focused on helping you solve those your challenges and your problems. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of The Real Dope.